Hello everyone. Have you ever had a moment so strange, so quietly unsettling, that you were not sure whether it actually happened once or twice? Hey everyone, welcome back, and tonight we are stepping into one of those mysteries that hides in plain sight, the phenomenon of tiny time loops, moments that seem to repeat themselves for no clear reason at all. Most of us think of time as a straight line. 1 second follows another, events unfold, and life keeps moving forward. But every now and then, someone reports a brief, eerie break in that line, a small loop, lasting just 1 or 2 minutes, where reality seems to replay itself exactly as before. Not a dream. Not a memory. A real, waking experience that feels like the world hit rewind for a moment. Imagine you are sitting on an airplane thousands of meters above the ground. The seatbelt sign is on. The cabin is quiet. Suddenly, the flight attendant makes an announcement, clear, calm, routine. Everything feels normal. But then, a minute later, the exact same announcement plays again, word for word, tone for tone, as if someone pressed repeat on reality itself. No turbulence, no system error, no explanation. Or picture yourself driving on a long highway. You pass a red truck, glance at a billboard, hum along to the radio. A minute passes. Then, without warning, you pass the same truck again, same dents on the side, same printed logo, and the same billboard appears as if the road itself looped. Nothing dangerous happens. Nothing physically resets. Yet something feels off, like time doubled back on itself. These are the reports people keep sharing: tiny loops, small repetitions. Moments that feel impossible but happen too suddenly and too precisely to ignore. They are not hours, not days, just slivers of time, repeating once and then disappearing as if nothing happened. And maybe that is what makes them so fascinating. They are quiet, subtle, almost too small to prove, yet too strange to forget. Some say it is just the mind misfiring for a moment. Others wonder whether time might not be as perfectly linear as we think. So tonight, let us step into this curious world of repeating minutes and explore why so many people believe they have lived the same moment twice. When people describe these small time loops, they do not talk about vague impressions or fuzzy déjà vu. They talk about precision, the kind of repetition that feels too exact to dismiss as imagination. Witnesses say the moment does not just feel familiar. It feels identical, as if reality itself pressed a subtle repeat button. Maybe they hear a sentence spoken in exactly the same tone, with the same pauses, the same background sounds, even the same small gestures from the speaker. Maybe they see an object move in the same way twice, a person walking past them with the same stride, holding the same bag, looking in the same direction. Some even mention environmental details repeating, like a breeze shifting the curtains the same way or a seatbelt clicking in the same rhythm. It is the perfect match that makes these moments so hard to ignore. Déjà vu gives you a feeling that you have experienced something before, but these loops are described as literal copies. Not a sensation, but an event repeating itself. One witness described sitting on a train and watching a man across the aisle drop his pen. A minute later, the man dropped the same pen again, in the exact same way, same motion, same sound of the pen hitting the floor, same little laugh afterward. Another person recounted hearing a friend tell a short story during a road trip, only for the friend to tell the exact same story again a minute later, with the same expressions and pacing, even though the friend swore they had not repeated anything. These are not long scenes or dramatic rewinds. They are tiny slices of life, repeated almost too smoothly, as if the world briefly slipped and replayed itself before continuing on as normal. For people who experience it, the moment leaves a strange aftertaste, a mix of curiosity, unease, and the quiet question: if this repeated perfectly, what does that say about time, memory, or the structure of reality itself? It is interesting and a little unsettling that these tiny time loops do not usually happen in everyday places like living rooms, cafes, or offices. The majority of reports come from two very specific environments: airplanes and highways. And when you think about it, both places share something in common: long stretches of monotony, routine motions, and a sense of being carried forward at high speed. On airplanes, passengers often sit still for hours, surrounded by steady hums, repeating announcements, and predictable patterns. Yet many witnesses insist that what happened to them was not just boredom or zoning out. They describe a moment repeating exactly, like hearing the same safety instruction or the same cabin noise in perfect duplication. Some passengers said the loop felt like the entire cabin froze for a minute and then replayed the scene as if someone restarted a short clip. Highways bring their own version of the phenomenon. Long roads, constant speed, and stable scenery make it easier to notice when something repeats that should not. Drivers report passing the same vehicle twice, seeing the same tree or billboard appear in the same sequence, or hearing the same line from their passenger replay exactly as before. It is not like missing an exit or turning around, they continue straight, yet the world around them seems to double back for a moment. One driver said he passed a blue minivan with a broken taillight, then a few seconds later passed the same minivan again with the same bumper sticker and the same family inside. Another person on a long-haul bus claimed the bus hit a small bump on the road, and then 1 minute later hit the same bump again with the same jolt and the same suitcase falling from the overhead rack. These environments, planes and highways, create a strange stage where time feels stretched, smooth and unchanging. Maybe that is why people notice the loops there most clearly. Or maybe these high-speed, high-motion settings reveal something about the fabric of time that we do not normally see. Whatever the reason, it is in these quiet stretches of travel that the world most often seems to slip, rewind, and repeat, leaving witnesses wondering if time is as stable as we think it is. What makes these moments so striking is how clearly people remember the details, not just actions, but sounds, voices, even tiny gestures that repeat exactly. It is rarely something vague or blurry. Instead, witnesses often describe the same sensory input happening twice, like a short piece of reality playing on loop. Some people say they first noticed the repetition through sound. A flight attendant's announcement, a captain's instruction, a passenger coughing behind them, all happening again with the same pitch, the same timing, and the same background noise layered underneath. It feels unnatural because real life rarely repeats itself with such precision. Others notice through movement. Someone bending to pick up a bag, a driver adjusting their mirror, a child kicking the seat in front of them then doing it again, in perfect sync with the previous moment. These repeated actions are not rehearsed. They are spontaneous things no one would perform twice in the exact same way, and that is what makes the repetition so disturbing. One traveler recounted hearing the person next to her say, "I think we will be landing early," while shifting in their seat and tapping their foot. 1 minute later, she heard the exact same sentence, same tone, same rhythm, same foot tap. Another described a man adjusting his glasses on a bus, dropping his hand, then scratching his nose, and then performing the same sequence again with identical timing. There are also cases where people hear environmental sounds repeat, the clatter of a service cart, the hum change in the airplane's engines, or even laughter coming from another row. These are not things that typically repeat in perfect form. And it is this precision, the sense that everything is exactly the same, that separates these loops from mere coincidence or forgetfulness. Life is full of patterns, but it is not full of perfect copies. For witnesses, the moment often brings a jolt of awareness. They sit up straighter. They look around. They question what they just experienced. Because deep down they know that whatever just happened should not have happened twice. Out on long highways, where the world stretches endlessly in front of you, tiny details stand out more than you think: the color of a truck, a dent on a bumper, a faded billboard on the side of the road. That is why so many drivers notice something strange when a time loop happens. They see the same vehicle or the same landmark twice, even though the road ahead is supposed to be completely new with every passing second. One of the most common reports involves cars or trucks that appear twice in the same sequence. Picture this: you are driving at a steady speed, watching the flow of traffic. A large delivery truck passes you on the left, its company logo scratched, one of its brake lights dimmer than the others. You keep going maybe a minute, maybe less, and suddenly that same truck appears again, same speed, same scratches, same dim tail light, as if it re-entered your path from nowhere. Some drivers even describe the exact same interaction repeating, like overtaking a car, changing lanes, then encountering that same car again moments later in precisely the same position. It is not a matter of turning around or missing an exit. These loops happen on straight roads with no opportunity for the vehicles to circle back. The same goes for landmarks. A rest stop sign, a row of oddly shaped trees, a particular gas station billboard, all appearing again in the same order. One witness said he passed a road sign warning about deer crossings, only to pass the exact same sign with the same scratches and leaning angle a minute later, even though the road ahead was a continuous straight line. These moments create a ripple of disbelief. Drivers often slow down, blink hard, or check their mirrors just to reassure themselves that they did not imagine it. But deep inside, they know what they saw: the same slice of the world, repeating like a scene played twice. And because highways are designed to move us forward without pause, seeing the same moment reappear feels especially strange. Like the road itself folded for a second and placed the same piece right in front of you again. On airplanes, where every sound is amplified by the enclosed cabin and every movement feels precise, passengers tend to notice repetition even more clearly. That is why so many time loop accounts from flights involve the same announcement, the same small shift of the aircraft, or even the same cabin noise happening twice, perfectly matched, down to the second. People often describe hearing a routine announcement, something like a seatbelt reminder, a weather update, or a simple greeting from the crew, and then hearing the exact same message again 1 minute later. Not similar. Not familiar. Identical. Same tone, same pacing, same pauses, same faint static in the background. Even the alignment of the crew's footsteps or the clatter from the service area seems to replay. One passenger said the plane hit a tiny pocket of air, causing a subtle dip, nothing dramatic, just a soft drop. A moment later, the aircraft repeated the same tiny motion, the same vibration in the seat, the same quiet gasp from the person sitting beside them. Another traveler described watching a flight attendant place cups on the drink cart, only to witness the same action again with the same rhythm and the same soft click of plastic. What is strange is that these repetitions happen in environments where everything is tightly regulated. Cabin announcements are controlled. Engine sounds follow mechanical rhythms. Movements of the aircraft come from real physical forces. None of these things should repeat in perfect synchronization unless something external or something deeper influences the moment. Passengers often react with sudden alertness. They look around, wondering if others noticed. Many describe a chill, not from fear, but from the realization that they witnessed something precise, something impossible to chalk up to daydreaming. The cabin's controlled environment makes any repeated moment stand out sharply, like reality glitching for just a breath before continuing on its path. The aircraft keeps moving. Time keeps flowing. But for that single instant, it feels like the world duplicated itself and then quietly pretended nothing happened. When these tiny time loops happen, the strangest part is not the repetition itself, it is the way the mind reacts in the split second after the loop ends. Almost everyone who experiences it describes the same feeling, a sudden, sharp wave of confusion, like their brain is trying to catch up with what just happened. It is not panic. It is not fear. It is more like the world flickered and your mind needs a moment to reboot. Some people say they feel a light pressure in their head, as if their thoughts momentarily jammed. Others describe it as a sudden blankness, where the surroundings feel both familiar and strangely duplicated at the same time. The moment is brief, sometimes just a few seconds, but intense enough to make people sit up straighter, blink repeatedly, or look around to check if they are still in sync with the present. One witness described it as a mental stumble, the same way your foot slips on a step you thought was solid. Another said the moment after the loop felt like waking up from a dream but realizing you were never asleep. Drivers often grip the steering wheel harder, suddenly hyper-aware of the road. Passengers on planes sometimes check their watches, hoping the time has not literally jumped backward. Part of the disorientation comes from the brain's instinctive need for patterns. When something repeats perfectly, a sentence, a movement, a scene, the mind tries to place it somewhere. Was it déjà vu, a memory, a glitch in attention? But when the details match too exactly, the brain realizes there is no logical category to put it in. That is when the confusion hits. People are not confused because they do not understand what happened. They are confused because, for a moment, the event does not fit into the rules they have known their whole lives. And once the moment passes, everything goes back to normal as quickly as it appeared. but the lingering sensation stays a quiet, unsettling awareness that something about time, perception, or reality might not be as stable as it seems. While the experiences feel extraordinary, some researchers and theorists take a more grounded approach. They suggest that these tiny time loops might not be breaks in reality at all but momentary glitches in how the human brain processes information. According to this view, the repetition people perceive could come from microfaults in attention, memory, or sensory integration. The brain is constantly recording, sorting, and stitching together millions of small details: sounds, movements, sensations, conversations. Under normal circumstances, this process is smooth and seamless. But every so often, something may interrupt that flow. A brief lapse in attention, a tiny delay in how the brain encodes a moment, or a temporary overlap between short-term memory and present perception could cause the mind to replay a recent experience as if it were happening again. Some neurologists compare it to a tiny buffering glitch in a video. The scene jumps back a second or two, not because the video is broken but because the playback momentarily stuttered. Others propose that the brain might occasionally misfire in a way that duplicates a fresh memory and presents it as a new, real-time event. There is also the idea of temporal binding, the process where the brain groups events that happen close together in time. If this mechanism slips or resets briefly, it might create the illusion that a moment has repeated itself, even though time never actually looped. These irregularities would be rare, subtle, and nearly impossible to detect with current tools, but they could explain why the loops last only a minute or two, and why they disappear as quickly as they form. This perspective does not make the experiences any less strange. In fact, for many people, the idea that the mind, the very thing we rely on to interpret reality, could duplicate a moment so perfectly is just as mysterious as any theory involving time itself. After all, if the brain can replay a real moment with flawless precision, what else might it be capable of creating, altering, or repeating without us ever realizing? To understand tiny time loops, many scientists look toward familiar mental phenomena, especially déjà vu. Déjà vu happens when the brain mistakenly labels a new moment as something it has already experienced. It is quick, unpredictable, and rooted in the brain's internal timing systems. Because of that, researchers believe that small time loops might share some of the same underlying mechanisms. One theory suggests that sensory information can occasionally take two different pathways through the brain, reaching conscious awareness at slightly different moments. If the second signal arrives just after the first, the brain might interpret it as a repetition, even though it is simply delayed processing. This could create the impression of a moment happening twice, almost like a mental echo. Another explanation involves the brain's short-term memory buffer. Sometimes, a tiny neurological hiccup might cause the brain to temporarily replay the most recent experience instead of moving forward naturally. This micro-misfire lasting only a second or two might be enough to make a person believe they witnessed the scene again with perfect detail. Scientists also point to attentional lapses. If your attention briefly disconnects, the brain may try to reconstruct the missing moment by pulling from immediate memory. When attention snaps back online, the reconstructed memory might overlay the present experience, creating a seamless but uncanny repetition. While none of these explanations are proven, they highlight one important idea: the human brain is constantly juggling perception, memory, and sensory input. When that delicate balance stumbles for even a fraction of a second, the mind can produce experiences so vivid that they feel like the world itself has looped. Of course, for the people who live through these moments, the scientific theories do not always make the experience easier to understand. Because no matter what the neurons are doing behind the scenes, the feeling is unmistakable: a real-time moment that returns for a second round, leaving behind a lingering question about what the mind perceives and what it might be missing. While scientists point toward the brain, others look outward toward the nature of time itself. For these thinkers, the idea of tiny time loops is not just a trick of perception. It might be a sign that time does not always flow as smoothly as we believe. Some speculate that the world occasionally experiences small wrinkles or micro-anomalies in space-time, brief disturbances where reality momentarily folds or repeats. These theories do not claim that hours or days rewind. Instead, they suggest that time might have small fluctuations, the way a calm lake might ripple even when there is no wind. A slight distortion could, in theory, cause a fragment of time just a minute or two to replay before the flow stabilizes again. One idea comes from the concept of time as a dynamic, flexible dimension rather than a rigid line. If spacetime can bend or stretch under extreme conditions, some wonder if tiny imperfections could occur naturally, creating momentary loops too small for instruments to detect but noticeable to the human mind. Others draw comparisons to computational glitches like a program briefly freezing and reloading the last second of data. If reality is governed by underlying rules or patterns, perhaps these loops represent brief resets, moments where the system hiccups and replays a recent event to maintain continuity. There is also speculation involving quantum processes, where particles can exist in overlapping states or flip unpredictably. If consciousness interacts with these states in ways we do not fully understand, maybe the mind occasionally perceives a repeated moment not because the brain malfunctioned, but because time itself shifted at a microscopic level. Of course, these ideas remain speculative, more philosophical than scientific. But they persist because the experiences themselves feel so precise, so cleanly repeated, that many people find it hard to believe the loop is only in their minds. For them, the phenomenon hints at something deeper, something woven into the structure of reality that we are only beginning to glimpse. Whether time loops come from the brain or from the fabric of the universe, one thing remains certain: they challenge our assumptions about how time works and remind us that even the smallest moment can hold a mystery we can't yet explain. When we put all these pieces together, the repeating moments, the identical sounds, the doubled movements, and the lingering confusion, one thing becomes clear: tiny time loops, whether rooted in the brain or in the nature of reality itself, remind us how fragile our understanding of time truly is. These loops do not last long, they leave no physical trace, and they often slip away before we can fully process them. But the feeling they leave behind is unmistakable. The sense that for one brief breath, the world did something unexpected. Something that did not follow the rules. Maybe it is a glitch in perception. Maybe it is the mind briefly echoing the present. Or maybe, just maybe, time itself has more flexibility than we realize. Either way, these moments force us to question what we think we know. They remind us that even in the most ordinary places, a quiet airplane cabin, and endless highway mysteries can still unfold in the smallest fragments of our day. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into one of the strangest and most subtle time mysteries out there. If you have ever felt a moment repeat itself, or if you carry a mind full of curious questions like these, feel free to share your experience. I would love to hear it. And as always, if you enjoy exploring mysteries like this with me, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next story, where we will uncover another question hiding just beneath the surface of everyday life.